All right. My goodness, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Well, other than being stuck, it's very unusual for me. I haven't been stuck for the longest time, and so this is kind of weird.
Yeah.
But I mean, like just summer vacation for you, basically, right?
Yeah. Well, there's been no difference since March, really, for my summer vacation. It's basically been the same, and I bet for you as well.
Yeah, yeah. And all the guest conducting is gone, and yeah, Brevard's gone. So
Uh,
right now it's really helping the two orchestras I'm with, just planning.
hmm So what is that like? How do you help the two orchestras right now in this position?
Well, it's well, we know that in the fall it's not really going to be the same,
hmm
right? And so it's a lot of okay, well, going to the venues to see what we can do, what is permissible from a health and safety point of view,
Yeah.
then how to keep our subscribers and donors happy because they are probably not going to get a big orchestra because we're probably going to have social distancing on stage. And what about a lot of our patrons, of course, are at the age group that are a little higher risk. So what if they have subscribed but they don't feel comfortable coming into a concert hall, even if they're 6 feet apart or whatever it is? So we're thinking of options like what about live streaming for them?
hmm
What else can we give them to keep them engaged? And all of this, of course, we're trying to still play as well as we can, but with reduced numbers. And how do we do that? And also, how do we get through this pandemic alive, as in the orchestra? I mean, you've seen a lot of orchestras around the country and the world. Some drastically have furloughed everyone, and basically suspended operation. Just gonna okay, well, we're gonna just not pay anyone and just sit through all of this. Now that's one way to do it, but of course your musicians or staff, they're going to really suffer, and that's a lot of companies in the states have done that. You only have to think of the airlines and the retail and so on. So we haven't. We're trying very hard not to do that. We know that our patrons want some sort of a season,
Yeah.
and so the same here and in Illinois is a different organization. So we have just slightly different parameters to work with.
hmm
Yeah. Now, where are you? Are you in North Carolina, Asheville?
I'm in Asheville, so yeah, everything is mostly shut down here, uh,
Yeah.
just as well as so. It's been very hard to uh, the Asheville Symphony as well, and is trying to get grants as well and do that sort of thing, like you were saying. So you did not begin uh, your career, your professional career, as a in the world of music or as a conductor. You were a lawyer, weren't you? So when did you? Why did you switch to being a conductor from your from law?
Well, I wanted to be a conductor since I was very young. Like I think probably 8 or 9 or something like that, watching Leonard Bernstein conduct on television, and that was when I was a kid in Hong Kong. And of course, having Tiger parents, I wasn't really given that choice. My mom would say, oh, go do something, make a living. And but I played violin, I played piano, I sang, and did all the stuff that Asian kids do. Because especially in Hong Kong, we don't really have space for sports. Our basketball court is on the roof of a 16-story building. So we did music instead, and music was very competitive in Hong Kong. So I was reasonably good, but then at 15, I went to England to study, went to a boarding school, went to college there, but I didn't do music. I did economics as my degree, but the college I went to, there was a lot of music going on. So I played in university orchestra, sang in the chorus, and just did a lot. But I was an economics major, and after my economics degree, I went to the senior tutor and said, "Oh, I'd love to stay for a little while longer." And he asked me, what do I want to do? And I said, "Oh, how about law?" So then I studied law as well. And then went to London, became a lawyer, worked with a big law firm. I think at the time it was the biggest in the world. I was like one of like 8,000 lawyers worldwide.
Wow.
But the law firm was, the head office was at very near Barbican Center, where the London Symphony played and where the Guildhall School of Music it still is. So I would work till like 7 in the evening, and then I would go over to the Guildhall and have a violin lesson, and then go back to work afterwards. So that sort of kept my thing, my music going. I played in London Lawyers Orchestra, which was a very interesting experience because there are all these lawyers trying to play music, and being lawyers, and we're a very ambitious lot. So I remember once playing Mahler 5 with them, and I was one of 5 second violins. I think I was principal second or something, and it was just awful. It was really bad because nobody can make rehearsals, because rehearsals were I think it's 7 or 7:30, and we're all working 24/7 by that time. But the thing about it, I played chamber music, and that was the amazing thing. Was none of it was at a very high level, but it's the essence of amateur music making. So it just kept my interest and passion going. I love sight reading quartets without any sense of responsibility to the composer at all. We would just have a glass of wine and have sushi and just hack away, till the early hours in the morning. And so I then was seconded to our Hong Kong office of the law firm. And when I was, I did the same thing. I joined a local chorus. I played in a local orchestra, and I was actually good enough to join a professional orchestra as a substitute player. And so that was very, very nice. And one of the rehearsals, I was with a community orchestra. The conductor didn't show up. And so the chairman of the orchestra, can somebody take this rehearsal? And I sort of put up my hand and said, "Oh, how about me?" And so I did, and I really enjoyed it. And I think they enjoyed it too, because they basically asked me after that rehearsal for me to conduct them regularly. So that's kind of how I got and I had never had a lesson in my life at that point. And with the chorus, the choir I was in, a very similar thing happened. The conductor was leaving, and so I took over, and then I was busy, like conducting 2 nights a week, and then I thought, well, maybe I should learn how to do this properly. So that's when I took my annual vacation and went to Europe and went to these conducting workshops. And I went to a good number of them from, I think the year 2001 to 2004. And so the conducting continued. And by the end, I was conducting an orchestra and 3 choruses. So it was quite a lot, but I was still a lawyer, and the difficulty is that if you are, like a singer in a chorus, and if you're too busy, you have to go, you have a meeting at work, you can't make that's okay. People understand, but you can't miss rehearsals when you're a conductor. That just wouldn't work. So I actually quit my job and went and worked for a corporate that has people leave work at 6 o'clock. And so I was able to do all the rehearsals in the evening, and then it kind of got more and more serious. And I thought, well, maybe, I really enjoy doing it. I think people seem to enjoy working with me. Maybe I should really go and study. And I thought I would take a break. And I was in my mid-30s then. I took a break, and I decided to go to Peabody in Baltimore and work with a very well-known teacher called Gustav Meyer. And he was already in his mid-70s by then. And so I was very lucky. I was accepted. I think he just thought my resume was very interesting. This guy, like lawyer. And so I studied with him, and I was very lucky then. I got into Aspen. I got into Leonard Slatkin's National Conducting Institute. I won a competition. And then I got my first job as assistant conductor in Cincinnati. I can't help but think that they probably thought the same thing as Mr. Meyer. Oh my goodness, he must be passionate about it because he gave all his career up and so on. I did, I was very passionate about it, and I hope some of that comes through in my conducting and work with people. And so it just kind of continued. So I was in Cincinnati, and then I moved back east. I taught at Montclair State University, and at the same time, I was a staff conductor with the Baltimore Symphony. And then I got Charleston Symphony as music director and the Illinois Symphony. And all this time, I was in the summers, I would go to Brevard, which is where we met. How many summers ago was that, Aaron?
My first summer was in 2017, and then my second one was 2018.
Oh my!
So
wow!
Summers ago was when we first met. Yeah.
What's really amazing, this would have been my 12th summer at Brevard, and what's amazing, like in the players from Brevard used to be students at Brevard. They're playing in all the professional orchestras now, of course. And my principal viola in Illinois is used to be a Brevard high schooler.
Wow.
One of the percussionists used to be a Brevard high schooler, and many who sub in Charleston went to Brevard. So it's actually really, really neat to keep in touch and so on.
Yeah. So when you decided to quit your job at the law firm, did you see that at the time as a big risk? Or were you just kind of going with what you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. What I was thinking, okay, lawyers are by nature risk averse. That's what we're taught to do. We try and map out every scenario for our clients. And say, okay, if this happens, and that's how you draft a contract. Basically, it's just a menu of worst case scenarios. So I did plan it out, and I thought, well, I'm going to go to Peabody and study. I really thought at the time I maybe go for a semester or a year and maybe 2 years to do my degree. And law doesn't change very quickly. It takes, there's a lot of politics involved. There's a lobbying. So the law doesn't tend to change overnight. So if the thought was, okay, well, I go and study for 2 years, and then I can probably just go back and pick it up again as a lawyer. And at that time, I was around 8 years qualified lawyer, which is a very valuable commodity to law firms because you're not a trainee. If you're a trainee, you don't know anything. But by the time you're a senior lawyer, like I was, you actually can handle transactions by yourself, and that's what law firm wants. And so I thought it was going to be okay, and as with everything in life, Aaron, we all have to be a little bit lucky, be in the right place at the right time. And certainly certainly around then, I was in the right place at the right time a number of times.
So you start, like you said, slowly building on more gigs with music and conducting. And then when you quit your job, what do you do? What do you do now? I know, like a lot of people, they quit their job in some rural area and they move to New York and they want to be a filmmaker and they go, okay, I'm here. Where's my feature film at? So what did you do right when you quit?
I think, well, the quitting part wasn't that difficult because obviously I made sure that I had an offer from Peabody before I quit. So I went to Peabody, and I knew nothing. I wasn't part of the musical scene at all. I had no idea, apart from maybe the Juilliard and Curtis. I don't know anything about American music schools at the time. So I basically just kept my head down. I wasn't thinking so much of career. I was really thinking I really enjoy music. I really want to learn music because I didn't have a music degree and I was doing a master's. So I thought at the time, I just have a lot of holes to fill. I need to learn this. Oh my God. So I joined everything. I did Renaissance ensemble. I was singing in the chorus. attended every class that I could. And I was just having a really great time. And the same, with Aspen and all the other festivals that I went to, and I really wasn't thinking about career. But I guess when you can say that if you are in music for the right reasons, things just kind of happen. I think if you really no, I have to do this now. I have to conduct this orchestra. I have to. And I have been there before with law. I was in a rat race once too, but it was just in another profession. So I have a slightly different outlook than most people. I know, most young people, especially if they're conservatory trained, they're taught, it's kind of very narrow definition of success. I know it's changing now. And now I think conservatories are doing much better at opening up a whole new horizons for musicians. But before it was, if you don't join a major orchestra, you have failed. Or if you haven't won an international competition by the age of 20, you're not going to make it. That's just not a very healthy way to look at it. And I sort of did that when I was young with law. And here I just kind of I want to make music with people. What I've learned is it's like having lunch. It's not how expensive your lunch is, it's who you're having lunch with. That's the most important thing. So I'm, very happy at Brevard. I mean, we've worked together for 2 summers, and it's not about, is the high schoolers at Brevard the same as no, of course it isn't. But it's making music, and that's the most important thing. We're all in this spectrum of imperfection, right? I mean, even the Vienna Philharmonic don't play perfectly. Nothing is perfect as the score. You look at the score, that's when you look at what it should be. And we're all sort of somewhere along the line. So I think that attitude for me has been really important. Just keeping me sort of, it should all be about the journey and not the destination. Mm-hmm. And this is, I'm just having of course this pandemic is awful, but otherwise, I'm really having a great time.
Yeah. So your first professional job, was that the assistant conductor of the Cincinnati Symphony? So how did you get that job?
Well, again, you have to be fortunate a little bit. And I was at the Aspen Music Festival, and every year the festival recommends some of their students to major orchestras. And I was very fortunate. I was one of the young conductors who was recommended to Cincinnati when they had an audition. You can imagine these big orchestras, when they have auditions for any position, whether it's clarinet or assistant conductor, they're going to get 600 applicants. And how do you pick? Now, for auditions, a lot of times you have to let these people come, and they have a number of rounds, and maybe they have 2 committees running at the same time. But for assistant conductors, for conductors, they have to see them conduct, and that takes a lot of time. So they can't invite 80 conductors to go and conduct, because that just won't work from a financial point of view. So they invite probably 6 at the most, because they're going to give them maybe 25 minutes each, and that's a service. So, but what do you do with 600 applicants? So you basically watch videos and you go by recommendations. So a lot of orchestras, they talk to the major conductors who have connections with so-called promising young talents, and they ask them for recommendation. And so that's how it happened. So I was one of those recommended. I had an audition, and I was very lucky that day. I conducted the Rite of Spring correctly, and answered some questions at the interview, and got the job. And it's it's very difficult, because I in both Illinois and Charleston, we have an assistant conductor too. And I was for a couple of times now on the other side watching videos, and it's really difficult because you have, like even in Charleston, I think we had 90, 100 applicants, and you watch the video and you try to stay awake and give everyone, but it's really the first 30 seconds in the video. Did that conductor capture, or can he or she hold your attention? Yeah. Or is it boring? It could be that, somebody who's watching the audition, they just had lunch and they were falling asleep or something. It's a host of factors. It's very, just like instrumental auditions, you don't know what's happening behind the screen. It's tough, but I was lucky. I was lucky a couple of times, and I was also very lucky that it happened right out of school. I mean, if you look at people right now, the graduates. I mean, you're at school, right? Right now, and just think of all those folks who just graduated. I mean, it's pretty tough. I mean, and that's also luck of the draw. And I also know friends who, there's a friend of mine in Germany who won a concertmaster position the week before the pandemic hit.
Wow. So
he's fine because this is Germany. They're going to pay. They're still going to have concerts. But can you imagine, like, if the audition would have been 2 weeks later?
Totally different. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's there's a lot of luck involved.
So sort of playing off a lot of being in the right place in the right time and luck involved, because you were assistant conductor in Cincinnati, isn't that sort of how you got the job at Brevard?
Well, yes. We might have even talked about this before, but the artistic director at Brevard, Keith Lockhart, because he's the guy at the Boston Pops for a long time now. But he used to be one of his first positions was with the Cincinnati Symphony, and he spent a number of years in Cincinnati, so there's a lot of connection there. And when he took over at Brevard, I think 13 or 14 years ago, he said, okay, well, we need an assistant conductor. And so he called Cincinnati Symphony and said, hey, do you have somebody to recommend? And I was recommended. And so I started off as an assistant conductor. I didn't, even conduct the high school, because I prepared the high school orchestra at the time for the guest conductors who were coming. And I kind of just grew with Brevard, and I actually remember, it's a wonderful place. The cafeteria is just amazing food, and we look forward every year to go.
Not true, everybody.
So that's how I got Brevard, and I don't know what's going to happen with this pandemic. Every organization is going to change, so hopefully we'll still have some form of a festival. And
So you touched on it a little bit earlier, but you could easily get a job in the summer conducting another place or a professional group or a summer festival. Why do you keep coming back to Brevard?
I think I think Brevard is actually quite special. When I said earlier that I grew with the orchestra, it's really true. If you look at Brevard, and I have to credit, Jason and Keith and all the people in the leadership, the festival has improved every single year, and that's exciting. When I first came, I was preparing the orchestra for a conductor I would not name the conductor, but is a very fine conductor. And we were doing Vaughan Williams' Second Symphony. And so, we prepared the orchestra. And after the first rehearsal, this very well-known conductor said, well, this orchestra is not really capable of playing Vaughan Williams' Second Symphony. And we'll just do one movement. And so that was the level back then. It was a stretch they wanted to do Mahler, but it was not quite at that level. And we did Vaughan Williams too about 3 summers ago, and it was just, incredible. The transformation. We did, I think, Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony last year very well. And I would always, have this chat with Jason. I said, Jason, are you crazy? They're a bunch of high schoolers, and we can't put that together in a few days. Rachmaninoff's Second Symphony. Like most professional orchestras struggle if we don't have enough time to rehearse. But sure enough, we did it, and we do it well, and that's really exciting. That's really exciting. It's also 7 weeks of the year that I'm doing nothing but making music. Charleston and Illinois, they're great. They're really great bands, but these places I'm music director, and there's a lot of responsibility of a music director in addition to making music. I think making music is about 15% of it. And now I enjoy those things. A lot of those are, promoting the orchestra, keeping in touch with people, and making relations, building relationships and so on. But Brevard, it's because I'm not Keith Lockhart there. I'm the resident conductor. So I get to just be in one place, and I don't have to travel, and just spend 7 weeks and seeing that high school group, especially, I do conduct the other orchestras too, but I have a relationship with the high school orchestra there because I do them 5 of the 6 weeks, and seeing them from day 1 to the end of week 6, it's really, really gratifying. And, and for a lot of them to still just like this, we kept in touch, and it'd be amazing, to hopefully, play with you at some point in the future.
Yeah.
But as a lot of former students have done, and those connections when it's made early actually means a lot too.
Yeah. So, backtracking a little bit, so you won the Memphis Symphony International Conducting Competition in 2011, I believe. So,
yeah,
what was that process like, and how did that give you a boost in eventually getting to Charleston Symphony and other orchestras like that?
It's interesting. Again, this is like completely, being in the right place at the right time. The Memphis Symphony had a week cancellation or something, and they said, okay, we've got this week. What shall we do with it? I said, well, let's have a competition. And when most competitions in the world, and you know this for clarinet, usually there's an age limit. I don't know what that is. Is it like 30 for instruments, or like for conductors? It's usually around 35. I was 35 when I went to Peabody. So most competitions I can't even enter. But for some reason, I was told later on, the musicians of the Memphis Symphony decided, when they were also part of the committee organizing this competition, they decided there should not be an age limit to that competition. So I was like, oh my goodness, this is a competition, and it's in the States. We don't have to fly to you, because a lot of times with these international competitions, it's a big risk, especially if you're a young conductor, because if you're living in the States and the competition is in Romania or something, you have to buy your ticket to go there. That's $1,500, and then you have to stay in the hotel, and so. And then you go into the first round with 30 other people, and there's a real chance that the odds are stacked against you. You get cut, and then that's $2,000 for nothing.
Yeah.
So this one is in Memphis. So I said, okay, well, I'll apply and see what, and they picked me as one of the 10 semifinalists. And I was just like, oh wow, that's amazing. I went, and I think in my first year maybe, or second year in Cincinnati. I mean, I think it's certainly not my first year in Cincinnati. I was assistant conductor there. I remember I was doing the May Festival, and I went down and was lucky enough to win. And what that does, I mean, competition. There's so many competitions around. In Memphis, it's not like one of the major competitions, and so it gives you a tiny window. And if you win in a big international competition, it gives you a little bigger window, maybe a little longer, but that's all it is. You get, some engagements, maybe a couple of managers and agents will be interested to look at you. And that's how I got my management from the competition. You try and stay in touch. It generates a little bit of buzz. And it's a sort of resume thing. Okay, you've done a competition. But the most important thing I find, and I think that goes for instrumentalist as well as conductor, is just do good work. Pretty much every gig that I've gotten, it's because I've done some work that people thought it was good and remembered and recommended me. So, for instance, I'll tell you the story with Charleston. It was because I conducted, well, not because, it was partly because I reconnected with Charleston Symphony when I conducted Spoleto Festival. And how did I get Spoleto? Because I apparently did something well for the Cincinnati Opera, and the director recommended me to the Spoleto Festival, and that was a few years back. And when I was in Charleston, I reconnected with the concertmaster who I recognized being my friend from Peabody, and they were hiring a music director at the time. And I said, "Oh wow, when's the deadline?" So, "Oh, this weekend." So I just put in an application, and that's really how it has been for me for pretty much everything. But you never know when it's going to end. But you just got to be philosophical about it, because I've been very lucky. At some point, the wheel of fortune is going to turn, and so I'm just enjoy it while you can.
I think the most interesting thing is just this prominent combination of just, first you have to have good work, like what you're talking about, and then you need to have some sort of luck or being in the right place at the right time, which in my short career, or I've noticed that a lot, and I bet you have as well. And
have you noticed it mostly in other people, or has it happened to you as well?
I've noticed it in other people and in myself, like just people. A lot of the times you just gotta, if you meet like connections, one person, you'll know somebody who knows somebody else, and then all of a sudden that's somebody that can really help you or give you a boost and like create some buzz about you. So sort of that kind of thing.
Yeah, and there are people who are better at this stuff than others, right? There are people who are better at keeping in touch. There are people who are, very aggressive about it. It works. It works. But, I'm by nature a shy person. So that actually does not come naturally to me. So that's something, and, I have to work on it, because you kind of, it's sort of, you are your own company. It's like Aaron Inc. and Ken Lam Inc. And you have to really promote yourself, in a not in an obnoxious way, of course, but that's something I think we all can work on and do better.
Yeah. So what's the difference? What was the main difference for you going through an audition process of an assistant conductor position and the principal conductor, music director position of the Charleston Symphony?
Yeah, it's quite a big difference, because the job description is very different. For an assistant conductor, what is the duties of an assistant conductor? Is to help the music director with, you sit out in the hall, you take notes and so on. So you've got to be good at that. Usually you conduct the education concerts and the community concerts, maybe a youth orchestra. And for these education shows, community shows, you have one rehearsal to put it together. It could involve all sorts of multimedia, all sorts of collaboration. So you've got to be very good at organizing. And so that's what the orchestra is looking for. So when you audition for an assistant, you go up to the podium, they're not looking for, incredible musical insights that you can bring. They are. They want a good musician, but they're much more interested. Can you get the job done?
Yeah.
If you have one rehearsal or just go up there and conduct, will the piece fall apart because you're so unclear? So they still want artistry, but they need something that works up on the podium. That's why the American, and it's a very sort of American phenomenon. I mean, America is very good at that. America's driven by the orchestras, it's driven by economics, really, because there's no state funding. So we're getting donor dollars, we're getting grants, and they want to see that the grant money is used very efficiently. So instead of having 2-3 rehearsals for a concert, you get one pops, the same thing. So as a result, I think the School of Conducting in America say, okay, wow, that's what's needed in the industry. So we teach conducting technique. So America is actually very advanced in terms of analyzing, how to make it work on the podium with your hands, with your eyes, without rehearsal, so that everything is still put together.
So what's the opposite of that for the orchestras around the world? What do they do then if they're less of that manner?
It's interesting. If you look at some clips of the previous generations of conductors, you would, for instance, if you look at my this is one of my idols, Wilhelm Furtwängler, the conductor of Berlin Philharmonic before Karajan. You will see that if you try to figure out, okay, where's the downbeat? There's no downbeat. There's a feeling but there's a most tremendous and deep feeling of what the sound is, and what the pathos of the note is. So I feel like they're able to do it because they have a little bit more rehearsal time. So the ensemble, and there are pros and cons, of course. In that style, if you can't figure out what the conductor, if the conductor is not showing you when to play, then the orchestra has to develop a sense of ensembleship to figure out when. Is it like watching the concertmaster or watching the bass player, or who's leading it? So it's an incredible machine, because then it becomes an organism. And I think that ultimately is where every orchestra wants to get to, is to play chamber music. So then the question, of course, is what is the conductor doing there? Well, if you look at what Furtwängler is doing there, he's not showing you when to play or even how to play. You can look at each other and play on, and you can look at your part, and you're louder, softer. It's all there. But the highest form of conducting is really showing you why you're doing it, and that's what these really, really great conductors, especially in the past, people like Furtwängler, people like Celibidache, now, it's of course for a lot of them, it's a very romanticized concept. It's their concept of how the music should sound, but they convey it by just the force of their personality. Like nobody, the joke used to be, I think, some of the Berlin Phil players said, so when do you play, with Furtwängler? Oh, we play when he reaches the second button on his coat or something. Now, in America, you of course you try to do that too, but there's one rehearsal. So what do you do? Now, you've got to be able to produce the goods. Now, wouldn't it be amazing if you have both?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I think the world is coming, because America always leads Europe. I think you like in terms of like education and outreach ideas, like America's way ahead of the rest of the world, with the kind of the way we produce concerts, because we are forced to innovate because the resource is limited.
Mm-hmm.
and we lead the rest of Europe and so on. And if you look at Europe, they don't have 30 rehearsals anymore. They're getting more and more like the United States. So I
Yeah.
think you see a sort of convergence of the school. But here, the danger, of course, for us is that we focus so much on this that we forget that there is the deeper side of why we're doing it. And sometimes when we have one rehearsal, we can't. The truth is that we should and we can,
Yeah.
but it's more difficult.
So you apply for the Charleston Symphony job the week before the deadline, and you get picked as how many finalists did they choose, and how do they do that process?
Yeah, I think there were maybe 5 or 6 finalists, and so everybody had a concert to conduct, and lots of interviews. You meet the donors, you have a Q&A, and you meet the staff, and so on. And you just kind of present your vision of now. Of course, what they're looking for in a music director is. We talked a little bit about assistant conductor. What they look for in a music director is not just somebody who's inspiring on the podium. You've got to be, and that's a given. You have to be able to do that. And the orchestra will tell the board, the orchestra members, they are on the search committee too. But it is also about, are you able to represent the orchestra in the community?
Yeah, be the face. Yeah.
Be the face. And what does that actually mean? That means going to the donors and inspiring them to support the orchestra. Telling. So, for instance, in Charleston, what I've done so far is we went from a very small education department. Now we have 2 youth orchestras here. We have a huge in-school program. We partner with the charter school. We have a conducting workshop. It's sort of like laying out the vision. And of course, it's not just me. It's our executive director, who's really, really fantastic. And it's our board, which is also really fantastic. And it's a combination of working together and figuring out what the vision of the orchestra is. Now, of course, my area is I've got to make sure the orchestra plays to the best of our abilities, and by to do that, you obviously there are many ways, and that's something I always feel very passionate about, is that we don't teach conductors these sort of non-technical skills at school. Not really. When I was an attorney, when our training involves presentation skills, negotiating skills, leadership skills, and so on as part of our training. And I wish more conducting schools have these training for young conductors, because that's what we're talking about. We're standing up there. We are the leader. We are the manager. We manage, 80 human beings. So they all have talents. Otherwise, they wouldn't be there. They all won an audition to be there. But how many of them will give you their best on any given day? Well, we're all human. Have you been to a rehearsal where you kind of felt, maybe not?
Yeah.
But it's tempting, especially when you are when you're not at school anymore and you have kids to worry about, you have your parents to take care of, you have a mortgage to pay, your dog may be sick that morning. So everyone has other pressures the older you get. How do you help them forget their pressures and still give you their best all the time? How do you encourage them or inspire them to, if they have 30 minutes at home, they don't go and vegetate in front of a television, but they go and practice. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, the key, because nobody wants to sound bad on stage. Is a question of how much they want to sound good. And I feel like that's the key really to success. This stuff, the conducting technique, like if you're a great musicians, like all these professional musicians I work with, they can forgive a lot. They don't really need your downbeat. They will tell you, oh, I'll just watch the concertmaster. And that's how these orchestras cope with guest conductors week after week. Because every conductor has a slightly different technique. How do they still play together? Well, they don't watch the conductor for when they play. They watch each other. They listen to each other. They watch the conductor for inspiration. How is it supposed to sound? And so I think the responsibilities of a music director is very different from a staff conductor, and it's very rewarding to be a music director, but it is also, the demands are a lot more. So the sort of balance of being music director and then maybe going to Brevard for 7 weeks in the summer and not having to do that is actually quite nice. It's kind of energizing.
Mm-hmm. So do you think that all this whole package that comes with being a music director, do you think that's is that inseparable to like all these things, like having to be the face and talking to the donors? Do you think that maybe orchestras, is that maybe too much of a burden on the music director, or do you think it's really, there's no other way that it can be done because it's sort of inseparable?
I think that's certainly American Symphony Orchestra, and and that's only two sides of it. Like, what is your vision? How do you go to your community? How do you keep and make your orchestra relevant to the community? And those are real challenges, and it reflects your own humanity. Why am I here? It's like every musician asks this question. So what is my role in society? Do we want to help make it a better place for, our neighbors and our community? And there's no right or wrong answer. There are people I know that are just interested in Beethoven, and they're just interested in, Stravinsky and Schoenberg, and that's okay. But if that's what you're interested in and not the human aspect, the community aspect, then maybe you shouldn't be a music director. You can be, a guest conductor, around, and that's totally fine. And even within, this desire to help your community, there are many different ways and many different viewpoints. And how do you, we're in a very divided society right now. How can I help to listen and bring people together? And that's actually a very complicated question. And because a lot of times, we're human beings. We are interested in being right rather than being effective. And that's maybe that's outside of the topics, right, that we should be talking about now.
So what do you see as the biggest challenge for regional orchestras, or frankly, any orchestra in the coming years beyond just the pandemic?
Wow, I mean, that's $1 million question, isn't it? I mean, of course, the world is changing very fast. Even your generation and my, it's the technology is very different. Your way of communicating with each other is very different. Your outlook is very different, and it just, the world changes so quickly, and the orchestras as an art form have to sort of keep up, and that's a big challenge. And the pandemic, I actually think, has raised a lot of questions, and it's basically demanding a lot of answers from orchestras. If this pandemic hadn't happened, a lot of us would let's just keep on doing the thing. And there's people who think, even 100 years ago, everybody thinks the orchestra is going to die out because everyone who comes to the orchestra is of a certain age and so on. Nothing's changed, and I actually don't. I'm not sure that's. Yeah, I think it's changing even faster. I mean, don't you think?
Yeah, you used to. I always thought when I was younger, before I came to Brevard, like, oh yeah, the orchestra is dying. All the audiences of that generation. But you were talking. I think it was 2018. You were talking about how, because everybody's asking why do it was like a post concert talk. Why is it all the older generation coming to concerts? And you were saying, well, the younger generation, 30s, 40s, 50s, they're working. They're not retired. So do you think it's maybe more of that there is different things that interest us other than live music, but I'm led to believe that probably mostly retired people will have more time.
They have more time, and that's certainly true. But the key thing here, I think, is that those retired folks who are coming to concert, they all have exposure to classical or to music when they were young, and that's not the same these days, and that worries me because they used to all have public school programs, music programs. They all played an instrument. They all did band. They sang in choirs. Now we still have, like for the fortunate ones, we still have that, but I mean, in Illinois, in Springfield, they took away the public school string programs in the 70s. All they have is band, so there's no string program, and that's why they have a youth orchestra who helps with that. But you're seeing that across the country is big challenges, because education funding has been cut. You only need to look at the cost of colleges in this country. I don't know how anyone can justify doing it, right? I mean, I don't know how it's going to be sustainable. But if these young folks never had exposure to music or never had the joy of playing in a group or singing in a choir, when they have time, when the kids are grown up, they're not going to come back to music. And that's what I worry. And that's why it's a much bigger change than what a symphony orchestra can do. We have to sort of lead. We have to be the voice to advocate. And the work goes on, and it's a big challenge. It really is a big challenge in the United States. So it's really up to young people. Go vote. And go try and make some change. I cannot yet vote because I'm not yet a citizen. But I always, every time I see people, yep, we can talk about it all the time, but you have to go and yeah.
So,
yeah.
Do you have any last main message, or what's your just any last message for the audience, and just about your philosophies or anything in general?
Yeah, well, I think what's worked for me is I think it's important to do what we do for the right reasons. And so I do it literally because I love music, I love people. And it doesn't matter whether you're a high schooler or one of the top professionals in the world. I try to treat everyone the same way and try and make the best music we can, knowing that none of us is perfect and we probably will never be perfect. But just the joy of, it's like hitting a golf shot. Once you hit a perfect 7-iron or something, you're hooked because you want to get back to that feeling. I think music is the same. I bet you when we did those 2 summers together, I bet you probably not very often, but we probably had a few moments when everything clicked and we felt like, oh my goodness, that's what it's supposed to feel like. And that's why we're still doing it. That's why we're still doing it. And also I've never tried to be something that I'm not. I think we have to just embrace ourselves with all the strengths and weaknesses. I've plenty of weaknesses, and I try to get better with those things. I try to get better as a musician, but you're going to get Ken Lam. You're not going to get Ken Lam who wants to be so and so. And I think that's important, especially for younger folks, because we all aspire to be something, and but it's important that we are very honest about who we are, and that I think that sincerity and honesty that comes through in the conducting. And if your conducting is not about the music, I bet I'd tell you anything, within 10 seconds the whole orchestra knows, and then they'll give you a sound that is self-centered and ugly, and that's the amazing magic of music making. But even in a pandemic situation, I always tend to look at, there are a lot of canceled concerts and lots of challenges and so on, but what can we learn from it? And I think it really brought to the front, why are we here? What are we doing? What is, we have to change and adapt, and really, and actually listen to the young people a little bit more, because they know. I mean, you're doing podcasts and so on, and I've literally, just started listening to podcasts a few months ago, because I have hours to kill. And I'm studying, I've been making videos for our patrons, and even our older patrons, they are forced to embrace technology because they can't be with their grandkids. They have to Zoom, they have to do whatever, So if there's a good thing about it, is this, which is that we are talking about what is it that can still help us to be relevant to not just the people that we've been serving, but to the whole community. And of course, with the Black Lives Matter movement, it also asks us a lot of questions too. There's a lot of tokenism around. Let's just do a concert here to honor the. How can we do something a little bit more effective? Have we listened to that community? Mm-hmm. But at the same token, have we listened to the other side, to people that actually disagrees with us? And I think that's also important. And that's, I think, a musician of all people, we can play a leading role in this sort of larger dialogue in our society. Yeah.
I think that's an excellent last message. Just one more funny thing. I remember that really put music into context for me. You said at one of our concerts, like to the audience, you were saying, you think about if you're in math class and you get a 90 on a test, that's pretty good. But imagine if orchestra only played 90% of the notes right. It would sound pretty bad. So I thought it really put into context how what we're striving for.
And that's, I think that's why I always tell the youth orchestra parents that, because it shows them that it's the right thing to do to encourage your children to learn music, because this idea of excellence and striving for 100% all the time, it's a trait that translates to everything else that we do. And so, if we're used to 60% being good enough, then, that's going to be your life. And we don't want that. Yeah. So that's, I'm glad, and I tell you, Aaron, the funny thing also is that as conductors, we also got to be very careful what comes out of our mouth, because people do remember what you say. And that's scary. I had one of the professional musicians in Illinois who was a sub, and he was in my youth orchestra, and I haven't seen him for a long time. He came up and said, "Ken, do you remember we were that rehearsal and you went down the elevator together, and this is what you said?" And of course, I couldn't remember it, but yeah, that's important. Be careful what we say.
Well, thank you so much, Maestro Ken Lam, for coming on the Forte Podcast. Anytime you want to come back, please let me know. I've just had a blast. And it's so great to hear from you. And please keep in touch.
Yeah, likewise. Thank you, Aaron.